Hey listeners, Shadows and Sightings is a paranormal comedy podcast. Though we keep things lighthearted, we understand some topics may be sensitive to some listeners. These topics include violence, gore, death, and suicide. If you have trauma related to any of these topics, express caution before listening. Thank you and enjoy the show. They had lost the direction of the door.
The erection of the door?
Direction of the door.
Hey, I don't know.
It's like, you know what they say when you get lost, just follow your erection.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Shadows and Sightings, the paranormal podcast where we talk about all things spooky. I'm Taylor.
I'm Nick.
And we are going to be doing some ghost stories this week. We were going to do it right after Halloween. Life happens, gets in the way. Things got crazy. Halloween was awesome, though. And now we're back.
Had a lot of fun.
Noodle just decided to sit like right on my shoulder. So that's always fun.
You can tell him to move.
He's right here. He's doing his thing.
The podcast cat.
The podcat.
The podcat.
Yeah.
He's a good mascot.
He is. He should be.
That'd be different. That would be, but I approve. That would be cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna do some. We've got a book of ghost stories. Whether or not you choose to believe they're real or not is up to you. It's up to the listener to decide. Use your theater of mind. But this is gonna be kind of a chill, relaxed episode. And then we are gonna start talking more festive things coming up soon. I think we're gonna. What do you think we're gonna do? Like a couple of like in between ones until we get into like December, and then we'll start getting into like the Christmas cryptids, as it were.
Christmas tales. There's something in there about Krampus.
Yeah, got the Mary Lude coming up.
Mary Lude. Could do some spiritual. There's just like a lot of ghosts associated with like with Christmas.
Yeah,
and
thanks to Charles
holidays.
Dickens.
Yeah, I'm not too big a fan of that.
Of Charles Dickens?
I don't mind Charles Dickens. I'm saying
or like ghost themed things around Christmas.
The Christmas Carol, with Scrooge and all that. It's just a movie that I get the hype behind it because it's Christmas.
Yeah.
Never really cared for it all too much.
I can agree. Apparently the Muppets version is the best version. So I've heard.
I really like, what was with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. Came out like 2 years ago.
That was a thing? I don't remember that movie.
It came out on Apple, but it's essentially a Christmas Carol. And Will Ferrell is kind of like this Christmas of the
He's
person
the Scrooge?
No.
Or is he the...
Well, spoiler, you're going to watch it?
Maybe.
Spoiler, so like he's the original Scrooge.
Okay.
And this takes place like 200, 300 years later in the future, like modern times. Ryan Reynolds is like a modern Scrooge, essentially.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Will Ferrell's trying to get him to like
come around. He's the ghost of Christmas past,
basically,
kind of, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's kind of replaying.
I wonder what that's called.
Spirited? It's pretty funny.
Spirited. Yeah, you're right. Spirited.
Yeah. If you get a chance, watch it.
You can watch that on Amazon Prime. All right.
Oh, is it on Prime now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I might end up having to watch that.
It's pretty funny.
So what happened this week, man? Anything good? Anything happened since Halloween? We spent Halloween together. We had a great time scaring the kids, handing out the candy, drinking some new drinks that we discovered thanks to this guy I watch on YouTube called Detours. He does tours of Salem and stuff like that. It's called a Sleepy Hollow, which is essentially Guinness and pumpkin ale. And man, they were good.
That's pretty good.
They were good.
That was good.
Pro tip, use the Sam Adams Jacko as your pumpkin ale. That's the key. That is the key.
Nothing much this week. Quiet after Halloween.
Yeah, good to know.
I love the holidays. I consider holiday season, like Halloween, is like the start.
Yeah, we talked about that in the Halloween nostalgia episode.
Yeah, it's like the start of the holiday season. When with like the holiday season, you go through each one, and I need like a period to like decompress afterwards.
Now we're in that decompress time.
It's I'm ramping up here for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing crazy.
Yeah.
You?
Same. It's been pretty quiet on my end. I'm just coming down from the Halloween high, man. It comes and goes so fast, and it's like, how long is it acceptable to leave my Halloween decorations up? I left them up for a week this year, and that's early for me to take them down.
We took him down pretty quick.
Yeah.
I think it was like the day or so after.
See, yeah, you're weak, man. Gave into the peer pressure.
I don't really think it was peer pressure. It was just like I knew I had to do it. I was like,
oh, Brittany took him down. Nick didn't help at all.
I did. No,
That's a face of a person that did not help at all.
I did. I agreed. And because if I don't touch him, I'm going to stay up there for like 3 weeks.
Well, that's fine.
Need to get him down, get him. No.
I used to leave them up just about till Thanksgiving, but it would be like Halloween and then Christmas instantly. Overnight.
You think that's bad? So you're talking about how certain places are already decked out for Christmas and all that. There's a house on 11, literally the day after Halloween, they had all of their Christmas decorations up, like lights and everything.
It's too soon. It's too soon.
And
there's people that are on the boat that it's November 1st is the start of Christmas, and I can't get on that boat yet. I can't get on it.
Do you think it's like an age thing? Like in 10, 15 years, we'll be that way?
I don't think it's that. I think it's a situation where you have a month of Christmas, like 25 days of Christmas, right?
Yeah. And
you do all this work to get the Christmas decorations up. And then you only get them for 25 days. And then, maybe you leave them up till New Year. So that's 32-ish days.
No.
And then you did all that work and you enjoyed it for a month. People are just like, I'm doing this now to enjoy this longer. I think that's what it is.
Maybe. That's fair.
Christmas is a lot of people's favorite time of season. So, I mean, hey, if it brings you joy, if it brings you happiness into your home, by all means, go for it. But just so you know, you're wrong.
it's like, it's fine. We all make our decisions. You're idiots, but
you can't play the Monster Mash on the 31st and then play Mariah Carey's.
Oh, no, that's too much.
On November 1st. Yeah.
That's too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
I am a little excited for the Christmas coffee creamers, though. I will give them that. Like the frosted sugar cookie.
They're already out, aren't they? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're already out. They started coming out like 2 weeks before Halloween. If you want to know my thoughts on that, just go back and listen to our episode.
Yeah. It really rustles my jimmies.
Yeah.
That's freaking yeah. Freaking holiday creamer on 2 weeks for Halloween. What's wrong with this?
It's the same situation too. They got the Christmas cookies out now. Like the little sugar cookies with the snowman and the Christmas trees on. They already have them out. And I know that if I don't buy one now, I will never see them again. It's do I want those cookies for Christmas? Kind of. Am I willing to buy them and have them in my fridge for 2 more months? I don't think I am.
I mean,
it's a tough call.
I think at that point I would just rather make homemade chocolate chip cookies or something like that.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know. There's those little ghost cookies. There's something about them.
They're good. Yeah, they're good.
But anyways, we're here to talk about spooky things because, damn it, we're still Halloweenies over here, kind of.
Yeah.
So basically, my idea on this, we are going to do a little bit of story time. So this would be like you just put this on in the background while you're trying to go to sleep or something.
Or maybe you don't sleep. Maybe you're a vampire.
Yeah, maybe you're just up all night and up all day.
Maybe you're at a rave right now and you just have the need to listen to a story while you're raving. I don't know.
Like a silent disco.
Yeah, I don't know what you do. It is.
You're just in the club listening to Shadows and Sightings, the podcast, while everybody around you is just going crazy and you're just in there also going crazy, but they're like, wow, that guy really must be listening to something crazy.
It has to be a weird experience. Those VR, like techno experiences.
Yeah.
You're just like in an auditorium. You got your headphones on, the VR thing going. It's just the sound of like squeaky shoes. Like in this auditorium.
It's like one of those videos where I don't know if you've seen them. It's like a video of Elvis and they take away all the music and it's just like his shoes squeaking and the guitar shaking around.
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen one basically the same thing of James Brown.
Yeah.
Like dancing.
That's so funny. So first up on our spooky stories is a story called Ghost Farm by Zach Chapman. This is coming from a book that I found at Second and Charles, Chilling Ghost Short Stories. You ready to listen?
This better be the scariest fucking story I've ever heard.
Oh, it's going to be terrifying.
If I'm not dead from fear.
If I don't turn into my own ghost story after this, I swear to God.
You better get a refund for that.
Outside the manor, rain pelted the rural landscape, turning the fields to marsh and the roads to muck. An impossibly broad figure stood alone, toiling away with a spade, digging shallow, unmarked graves. A dozen luxury vehicles seemed out of place, parked neatly next to the gravedigger in slanted manner. Inside the manor, a potential client spoke with a fake British accent. "I'll never drink anything bottled in this century." This had a fake British accent. I tried to do the worst one I could think of.
Just like, could you imagine? Just like, why are you talking to me like that?
I don't know. "I never drink anything bottled this century," he said, waving his chubby hand, dismissing the complimentary wine. The waiter nodded and continued down the table, pouring the dark wine for any client who wanted. Altogether, there were 13. Most were over 40. All were white. I don't know if they're talking about the wines or if they're talking about the people.
It's just like, that's a weird statistic to point out.
13 bottles of wine, all 40 years old, and all white wines, or 13 people, all 40 years old and white. Anyways.
These are the questions that keep me up at night.
I think this answers the question in the very next sentence. They complain loudly.
I didn't know wine could talk.
They complained loudly over their empty dinner plates. The steak had been too bloody, far too rare, and there was a sweet stench to the manor, like rotten candy. It was almost midnight. When the hour finally struck, a chime filled the dining hall, and a tall man wearing a well-tailored suit appeared at the head of the table. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I trust the meal was rather filling. My name is Irving. I will be your representative and tour guide tonight. You have already read and signed the release, so you'll know that before you can see any of our products, you'll be strip searched for cell phones, electronic devices, and anything that may be used as a recording device." A few clients who had not read the fine print grumbled at that. "We have streamlined the process. Your comfort is one of our greatest concerns. Though after any purchases," he smiled wickedly. At the side of the room, a curtain raised, revealing 2 doors. "Strip searches shall be quick. Once this is over, we go downstairs to the sub-villa." After every client momentarily shed their timeless formal attire behind the closed doors, Irving led them down a cracked spiral staircase. The smell of wet stone and many years betrayed the age of the place. It was much older than the slanted manor that was built around it, centuries old. More than that, timeless and dark. Irving brought back the clients to a halt. "Once you step off the staircase and into the antechamber," wow, that's a cool word, antechamber. I've never heard of an antechamber before.
Like a fancy
foyer.
Foyer.
Or a mudroom, perhaps.
That's like some bougie shit. Can you imagine just like introducing people to your home?
"Oh, yes, this is my antechamber."
Antechamber. Whoa.
So would an antechamber be the opposite of a regular chamber?
Or
Anyways.
is it like, I don't know, like before? Because like in Spanish, like
it's ANTE.
Yeah, okay, so probably before, and then I'm assuming it's like a room that you use before like something else, like before you go to bed. Before it's like, I'm gonna go sit in my antechamber for a bit.
That's a thing. That's a real thing.
I don't know. Like, isn't like?
I don't know. Look it up.
Aren't rooms like back in the day what they called like chambers? Like your bedroom
was
like
going
a
to my
chamber
chambers.
room.
Yeah, it could have been. You're right. "Once you step off the staircase and into the antechamber, you shall be in a very elite, very small group, even if you don't purchase any of our products. Fewer than 1,100 souls have passed through these hallways." He paused for impeccable dramatic effect.
So a waiting room. Just a modern waiting room.
I'm going to start calling it the antechamber.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to the doctor's office to sit in the waiting room. I'm going to the doctor's office
in the antechamber. It's like, I've been sitting in this antechamber for 45 minutes.
The what?
Antechamber.
You know. Right over there. Anyway. "Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready?" The group flowed out of the spiral staircase, nearly tripping over themselves in the excitement, and crowded the hallway. The sub-villa has been in business for many years. As you should know, our products are world famous, though of course our business does not take credit. Tonight you will see all products we have to offer at the moment. Here's some testimonies and glimpse the casting process. This sounds like Halloween 3, a little bit. casting process.
What if that just is what it turns into?
It might be. Irving ushered the clients forward through the cramped hallway. Without further ado, let us meet the first product. Black rock walls and sconces and echoes flanked the clients. Irving led the party to a windowed panel, nothing but shadows on the other side. When he flipped a panel on the side wall, a light on the other side of the panel flickered on. Through warped glass, rows of pews faced them. Sitting on a pew was a bearded man, gray and withered. To his left lay a rope with 3 thick, bloody knots tied at one end. On a second inspection, one could see wet, visible protrusions from under his robe, welts the size of a child's fist.
Ugh.
The sub-villa has named him the Apostate. He has been with us for 20 years. He is our most budget-friendly product. How much? A client asked. Irvin's thin mustache twitched. Please hold all questions regarding pricings after your tour appraising consultation. Now, before we apprehended him, the apostate was charged with abusing an altar boy. He has been repenting for quite some time now. Still, this product is not advised for households with small children.
Okay.
This is taking a dark turn.
Yeah. It's quite the disclaimer there.
It's a trigger warning, I guess. How are the products chosen? A woman in her early 40s asked. We have a large database where subjects are monitored. There are many determining factors. We ensure that we have a large variety of products at any given time. Mr. Irving, what physical object will the product haunt? That is a good question. In the apostate's rare case, the client will have the option to choose. Irving pointed through the window, between that crucifix he wears and that gruesome rope. More details will be revealed on the casting process later this evening. Let us continue on to more of the products.
Are they selling ghosts?
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they're selling
like they've found a way to commercialize spirits.
Yeah, and they're picking objects to fuse them into, and then you get like this haunted object in your home, or to give to somebody. Oh, this is something.
That's kind of cool.
This is interesting. Just as the holding cell became black, another one down the hallway lit up. The woman from earlier touched the glass, running her fingers over the ancient warps. If you could avoid touching the glass, your psychic resonance may disrupt our process. Also, unwanted products may taint you. The sub-villa does not condone any trauma or psychic phenomena brought on without the purchase of our products. If you witness any, please see one of our certified exorcists for a diagnosis and plan. Let me be clearer. Haunts without purchase is theft of service. I want that on a t-shirt.
We can make that happen.
Inside the next cell stood a mumbling woman. Irving hefted a lever up and down until the glass shook and slowly disappeared into the ceiling as he cranked. At the soft noises of Irving's assertions, the woman looked up. Swollen holes gaped under her eyebrows. Many of the clients gasped. Irving stepped forward into the cell. If you want to touch, now is a good opportunity. Please dip your hands in our psychic disinfectant agent. It's a variant of Vatican holy water, brewed with something special. He motioned to a bowl at the side of the cell. This will ensure there is no residual bleeding. You may touch her arms, cheek, hair, but please don't be too invasive. Upon hearing Irvin's voice, the woman wailed but made no motion to move. Her mouth was absent of teeth and tongue. Several clients quickly washed their hands in the disinfectant and began running their hands on her cold skin. A red-headed woman was too terrified to proceed. 2 others also refused to touch the blind woman. Cold feet? Irving did his best to hide a grin. He continued his pitch, this one modeled after the classic hag, a beautiful Gothic legend. Many accounts of similar past products have stated the entity floats above their beds, howling. Witnesses report a dread so deep it causes paralysis or a terror that causes involuntary screaming. Extreme cases may cause shortness of breath or an inability to scream. In recent years, we've put a warning on these products. Avoid buying if household members suffer from asthma or have any chronic disorders that disrupt normal breathing. The more excited clients spoke giddily. Ah, feel how cold she is, Martha. How creepy. Darling, isn't she wonderful? She reminds me of grandmother. Oh, I like her. That moan she makes is terrifying. It looks like she's weeping blood. Her skin is so cold, it feels real. Irving smiled. I assure you, she's real.
What's wrong with these people? So he's like mega ultra rich, probably client, or customers.
This is sounding like corporate elitists.
Corporate, yeah, exactly. Like Jeff Bezos, like, yeah, they can afford.
Stop me if you heard this one, but Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk walk into a haunted objects room to buy lost souls. Irving smiled. I assure you, she's real. There are many more products for you to see tonight. Now you've had a chance to touch her, please rinse your hands in the holy water provided at the exit. That is mandatory. Reluctant fingers wriggled away from the hag's skin. Irving motioned the crowd out of the cell as he spoke. As I said before, some products we have are similar to popular ones sold in the past. However, this does not mean each product isn't unique. Every entity is an individual, different from its predecessors. So we're not getting a generic hag. Sir, none of our products are generic, Irving said as he lowered the glass panel shut behind the last exiting client. Irving led the way to the next cell. Inside stood a man who must have been 7 feet tall. Long, stringy hair fell past his broad, slumped shoulders. At some point, he'd freed himself from a straitjacket. Broken buckles and ripped seams clanged off of him. The patient. When he was 14, he murdered his family with a cordless, circular saw after tying them to their beds in their sleep. Before the sub-villa obtained the patient, he terrorized and killed 4 families. He's heavily sedated to keep him safe, manageable state. When obtaining this one, he broke a villa employee's neck, vivisected him. Does that mean multiple?
'Tis the cutting of or operation on a living animal, usually for physiological or pathological investigation. Broadly, animal experimentation, especially considered to cause distress to the subject.
We suggest this product goes to a home whose occupant is intimately familiar with the paranormal, preferably one who has a strong connection with his or her spirit guide. The patient slowly walked towards the glass, staring intently through it. A vein in the patient's forehead pulsed and he bared his teeth. A shudder ran through the clients. At first, his screams were incomprehensible. His face swelled red. Spit flecked the glass divider, but on the other side, his thunderous voice was little more than a murmur. I'll break down this glass wall and stab you with the shards. Do you hear me? Even with the sedation drugs, he is rather excitable. Irving pulled out a handkerchief and dabbed his forehead. It appeared to be a practiced motion. Suddenly, the patient pounded on the glass. The boom echoed off the stone floor and the ceiling. He thrust his fist against the glass again, the metal buckles banking sharp pangs as they slapped against the barrier. A client's laughter roared back. Oh, I like this one. He has audacity. He'd make a great fright to put in my brother's house. Irving looked uneasy as the glass wavered. Hairline cracks manifested at the edges. Irving's tenor voice was even. If you would all step back from the patient. The patient's fist smashed through the glass, sending shards and droplets of blood across the hall. Clients shrieked, scattering away in all directions. Irving put himself between the clients and the patient. Snatching a device from inside his breast pocket, his long finger pulled the trigger of an electrical stun gun as the patient closed in on him. 2 electrode darts shot from the gun and found purchase in the patient's hulking chest. His attacker dropped immediately, convulsing. His head cracked against the floor and his eyes rolled back up into his skull. White foam frothed from his mouth, then slowly turned brown as it mixed with blood. Irving raised thin eyebrows as a quiet applause passed through the clients. I apologize. It appears something unprofessional always tends to happen. Is anyone hurt? No? Good. Any questions about this beast? Client clearly trying to hide a large erection asked. I was not prepared for that.
Oh my God.
A client clearly trying to hide a large erection asked, can we kill him? I'm sorry? I mean, if we purchase this product, are we allowed to physically kill them before the casting process? They have to die anyways before that. Can we be the ones to do that? You'll have to work that out during your after-tour appraising consultation. It is doable, but it will surely be more expensive. None of the other clients had any questions. Mostly, they stared at the patient's twitching body, watching as dark liquid filled the cracks on the stone floor. Irving ushered them forward and the gorgeous redhead client asked, what about him? Our staff is already on it. Let's round the corner. We'll come back to visit the rest of the products on this row after this mess has been seen to. Irving showed the potential clients a variety of inspired products. Mr. Voodoo, the Addict, the Bride, Sharona of Lyon, the Doctor, the Twins 1 and 2, a unique set of products. Yatsuya, the Samurai, Banshee, the Infected, Jaw, the Father, Klepto, the Paraplegic. I want to hear more about him. And the Alberine. Each product was met with the appropriate awes, gasps, and questions. Unfortunately, there was a lull of cliched products down on the final corridor, all with the similar origins and product warnings. Cutter, the Slaver, Slicer, Ripper, the Tongueless, and the Butcher. Just as the clients grew restless, Irving led them away from the cells to a room full of wooden racks. This is the totem incubation room. The odor of mold choked the atmosphere in the small room and mixed with a more sinister scent. The smell of earth and shadows, of things that have died but still live. Hundreds of the totems lined the shelving. On the one closest to Irving sat jewelry, a framed black and white photograph, a thick leather book, a sharpened spoon, china figurines, a metal rook, chess piece, several crucifixes, a scepter, rusted cordless circular saw, and a globe. Some of the group chatted lightheartedly over which products they planned to buy. A few others grumbled complaints, their tones edged on bitterness. When one client discovered another wanted the same haunt, I wonder how that will be determined during our after-tour appraising consultation. The disgruntled clients spat at the other as their argument escalated. Irving cut off the two. Gentlemen and ladies, mind these items. This is where alternative totems are stored. Touching one during this process can be quite detrimental to your psychic health. The group quieted down and listened to Irving talk about the details of how exactly souls were bound to the totems. To his left hung 5 robes with embroidered runes, dimly glowing. To his right was a vat of dark liquid. Irving explained that the vat contained liquid morphic resonance amplifiers and that the robes helped the caster, sometimes he himself, channel the soul into the correct medium. The chosen totem, by matching certain vibrational frequencies. As Irving neared the end of this explanation, an elderly client reached for a golden locket dangling off a splintered shelf. As his fingers wrapped around it, the lights flickered. Irving's eyes darted to the man's grasp on the totem. Like a bullwhip, Irving snatched the totem out of the client's fingers. He chanted loudly as the whole room began to rumble. Totems rattled on their racks. A few fell to the floor. Smoke boiled from the tight fist Irving had made around the locket. A client shrieked. Irving dipped his hands into the vat, pulled it out, and slammed it down on the closest surface available. Flexing his fist several times, he sighed and wrapped his handkerchief around the trembling hand. That was dangerous. Everyone in here was at risk. He shook his head. Tonight has been quite adventurous. Very well, I believe this to be the climax of our evening. The tour is adjourned. He led them out of the totem incubation room. Now there are 2 paths to choose from. Path 1, you are ready to make your purchases and be counseled through your appraising consultation. He peered around, making eye contact with each individual potential client. Path 2, maybe the thought of owning a ghost no longer seems as glamorous as you had once thought. Maybe you just took the tour and never had any intention of buying. Maybe the tour has disgusted you, or maybe you just aren't ready for the purchase. He continued as a mammoth-sized man stepped out of the shadows. Option 1, form a line and follow Brute out of the antechamber. Pardon his saturated state, he's been digging graves to accommodate the new sales. Option 2, please follow me. I'll lead you to the exit. 4 clients, led by the red-headed woman, fell in line behind Irving. Irving cocked an eyebrow at her. Are you certain? No product struck your fancy? Very certain, she said, determination in her voice. Right then, no swaying you. He marched the 4 down the gloomy corridor until they reached a 1930s-style elevator. He motioned the clients ahead of him through the folding lattice doors and said, Ladies and gentlemen, careful on your step. This old elevator bounces and sways. He helped each of them into the elevator and took a step back into the hallway as the lattice doors slammed shut. Steel cables cried under the weight of the occupants. What's the meaning of this? The redheaded demanded. Are you going to show us out or not? How are we going to get to our cars? Brute will have to deal with your cars, I'm afraid. One of you asked earlier how we obtain our products. Now you will see firsthand. He cranked a lever to the side of the elevator. Instead of going up, the elevator shook, then descended slowly. Shouts filled the chamber. Yes, Irving thought. What great specimens. One day they'll make great haunts. You can't do this. Stop the elevator right now. Irving turned, walked back towards where the real money was, and in a whistled tune, the shouts stalked him as he strolled. So he whistled harder. Now he thought, time to make some sales. The end.
Damn. Damn.
That was pretty cool.
That was neat.
That was pretty cool.
That was a cool concept.
Yeah. I never would have thought purchasing a ghost could be
commercialized haunts.
And yet it's like not that far-fetched, honestly. Like if you could actually harness the power of a haunting or a paranormal thing, absolutely capitalism would get its hands on it and would be selling it at every Walmart on the corner.
Oh, yeah. It would be like that super... Only at first, super rich.
At first, yeah.
You know, and then you'd have
Elon's, Bezos's, what's the fucking Walmart family, those guys. Oh, yeah, they'd all be there.
It kind of reminded me, what was that movie where the different nations all have to sacrifice to like a god or something, the different countries, and they have Cabin in the Woods?
Is that what happened? I know Cabin in the Woods, they all have like different chambers for all these different things. Maybe that's what it, maybe that's what it was.
I thought that's what it was. It was like each monster was like a god or a deity from like a different country, and they had to offer a certain amount of sacrifices.
Yeah. It could, yeah.
And if they didn't, it would bring like ruin to like the world or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but
that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
That
a little bit.
Kind of. The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs.
This is a classic.
I actually saw this as a play. I forget what it was in middle school or high school. I was a part of some club where we went and saw this as a field trip.
The theater club?
No, I don't think it was theater club, but I just remember for some reason we went to the Maryland Theater and they were playing this there. And this was one of the episodes or one of the productions, I guess. The night was cold and wet. But in the small parlor of the Laburnam Villa, the blinds were drawn and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess, the former, who possessed ideas about the game involving radical changes, putting his king into such sharp and unnecessary perils that it even provoked comment from the white-haired old lady knitting placidly by the fire. "Hark at the wind," said Mr. White, who, having seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. "I'm listening," said the latter, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." "I should hardly think that he'd come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Mate," replied the son. "That's the worst of living so far out," bawled Mr. White, with sudden and unlooked-for violence. "Of all the beastly, slushy, out-of-the-way places to live in, this is the worst. Pathways a bog, and the roads a torrent. I don't know what people are thinking about. I suppose because only 2 houses in the road are let, they think it doesn't matter?" "Never mind, dear," said his wife soothingly. "Perhaps you'll win the next one." Mr. White looked up sharply, just in time to intercept a knowing glance between mother and son. The words died away on his lips, and he hid a guilty grin in his thin gray beard. "There he is," said Herbert White, as the gate banged too loudly and heavy footsteps came toward the door. The old man rose with hospitable haste, and opening the door was heard condoling with the new arrival. The new arrival also condoled with himself.
They're doing a lot of condoling over there. He condoled, you condoled, we, he, she condoled.
Like some of these words, though, they're just like, you say them nowadays.
Like old-timey words.
Old-timey words,
Yeah.
like...
Nobody says condoled anymore.
Yeah, the neuro, just like, what does that mean? Like befuddled? Like condoled.
That sounds like
Like confused. The new arrival also condoled with himself. I don't know.
condoled or condoled.
C-O-N-D-O-L-E-D. Oh,
Express
condoled.
sympathy or grieve with.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Emily. Like that kind of thing. Like condoled.
Yeah, condoled.
Condoled, no.
It's condoled.
Condoled. Okay. The new arrival also condoled with himself, so that Mrs. White said, "Tut, tut," and coughed gently at her husband as her husband entered the room, followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund of visage. "Sergeant Major Morris," he said, introducing him. The sergeant major shook hands, taking the proffered seat by the fire, watched contentedly while his host got out whiskey and tumblers and stood a small copper kettle on the fire. At the third glass, his eyes got brighter. He began to talk. The little family circled regarding with eager interest this visitor from distant parts, as he squared his broad shoulders in the chair and spoke of wild scenes and doughty deeds, of wars and plagues and strange peoples. 21 years of it, said Mr. White, nodding at his wife and son. When he went away, he was a slip of a youth in the warehouse. Now look at him. You don't look like he've taken much harm, said Mrs. White politely. I'd like to go to India myself, said the old man, just to look around a bit, you know. Better where you are, said the sergeant major, shaking his head. He put down the empty glass and softly shook it again. I should like to see the old temples and fakars and jugglers, said the old man. What was that you started telling me the other day about a monkey's paw or something, Morris? Nothing, said the soldier hastily. Leastway, nothing worth hearing. Monkey's paw? Said Mrs. White curiously. Well, it's just a bit of what you might call magic, perhaps, said the sergeant major offhandedly. His three listeners leaned forward eagerly. The visitor absent-mindedly put his empty glass into his lips and then sat it down again. His host filled it for him. To look at, said the sergeant major, fumbling in his pocket. It's just an ordinary little paw, dried to a mummy. He took something out of his pocket and proffered it. Mrs. White drew back with a grimace, but her son, taking it, examined it curiously. And what is there so special about it? Inquired Mr. White, as he took it from his son, and having examined it, placed it on the table. It had a spell put on it by an old fakir, said the sergeant major. A very holy man. He wanted to show that fate ruled people's lives, and that those who interfered with it did so to their sorrow. He put a spell on it so that 3 separate men could each have 3 wishes from it. His manner was so impressive that his hearers were conscious that their light laughter jarred somewhat. Well, why don't you have 3, sir? Said Herbert White cleverly. The soldier regarded him in a way middle age is wont to regard presumptuous youth. I have, he said quietly, and his blotchy face whitened. And did you really have 3 wishes granted? Asked Mrs. White. I did, said the sergeant major, and his glass tapped against his strong teeth. And has anybody else wished? Persisted the old lady. The first man had his 3 wishes, yes, was the reply. I don't know what the first 2 were, but the third was for death. That's how I got the pall. His tones were so grave that a hush fell upon the group. If you've had your 3 wishes, it's no good to you now then, Miss Morse, said the old man at last. What do you keep it for? The soldier shook his head. Fancy, I suppose, he said slowly. I did have some idea of selling it, but I don't think I will. It has caused enough mischief already. Besides, people won't buy. They think it's a fairy tale, and some of them, and those who do think anything of it, want to try it first and pay me afterwards. If you could have another 3 wishes, said the old man, eyeing him keenly, would you have them? I don't know, said the other. I don't know. He took the paw, and dangling between his forefinger and thumb, suddenly threw it upon the fire. White, let out with a slight cry, stooped down and snatched it off. Better let it burn, said the soldier solemnly.
I can't get over that you said the glass chattering against his strong teeth. It gave me a weird vibe. Like he's eating the
like clinking it, like clinking
on
it,
his teeth.
On
Like,
his teeth. Oh god,
I don't like that.
Nails on a chalkboard. Like it's just,
I don't like that.
Is that a thing people did back then?
That's not the way you act in social situations. Ding, 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 ding.
Can you stop it? Like, okay, clearly there's 4 people in this room, and one of them's a psychopath.
He's talking about a fucking monkey paw in his hand and clanking his glass against his teeth. What a freak.
If you don't want it more, said the other, give it to me. I won't, said his friend doggedly. I threw it on the fire. If you keep it, don't blame me for what happens. Pitch it on the fire again like a sensible man. The other shook his head and examined his new possession closely. How do you do it? He inquired. Hold it up in your right hand and wish aloud, said the sergeant major, but I warn you of the consequences. Sounds like Arabian Nights, said Mrs. White, as she rose and began to set the supper. Don't you think you might wish for 4 pairs of hands for me? Her husband drew the talisman from his pocket, and then all 3 burst into laughter, as the sergeant major, with a look of alarm on his face, caught him by the arm. If you must wish, he said gruffly, wish for something sensible. Mr. White dropped it back in his pocket, and placing chairs, motioned his friend to the table. In the business of supper, the talisman was partly forgotten, and afterward, the 3 sat listening in an enthralled fashion to the second installment of the soldier's adventures in India. If the tale about the monkey's paw is not more truthful than those he has been telling us, said Herbert, as the door closed behind their guest, just in time for him to catch the last train, we shan't make much use for it. Did you give him anything for it, father? Inquired Mrs. White, regarding her husband closely. A trifle, said he, coloring slightly. He didn't want it, but I made him take it. He pressed me again to throw it away.
Seriously, you pressed me against the wall. Like, oh,
yeah, getting steamy.
Getting spicy.
Yeah. I think I downloaded the wrong book. Likely, said Herbert, with pretended humor. Why, we're going to be rich and famous and happy. Wish to be an emperor, father, to begin with. Then you can't be henpecked. He darted round the table, pursued by the malign Miss White, armed with an antimacassar. What is that?
Another anti thing?
I'll spell this one for you. Antimacassar. Antimacassar. These old-timey words.
A small cloth covering for the backs of arms of chairs or the cushions or head of a sofa that protects the fabric underneath from soiling. They're like fucking doilies.
Oh, okay. Yeah, doily.
It's like a doily.
Yeah, okay.
Like, just say doily.
Yeah, right. Mr. White took the paw from his pocket and eyed it dubiously. I don't know what to wish for, and that's a fact, he said slowly. It seems to me I've got all I want. If you only cleared the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you? Said Herbert with his hand on his shoulder. Well, wish for 200 pounds. Then that'll just do it, his father, smiling shamefacedly at his own credulity, held up the talisman as his son, with a solemn face, somewhat marred by a wink at his mother, sat down at the piano and struck a few impressive chords. I wish for 200 pounds, said the old man distinctly.
Oh, that's not going to go well.
Yeah.
He's going to gain 200 pounds. He's not going to get money.
He's not, no. 200 pounds. More than likely, that's probably what's going to happen. I wish for 200 pounds, said the old man distinctly. A fine crash from the piano greeted the words, interrupted by a shuddering cry from the old man. His wife and son ran toward him. It moved, he cried, with a glance of disgust at the object as it lay on the floor. As I wished, it twisted in my hand like a snake. Well, I don't see the money, said his son as he picked it up and placed it on the table, and I bet I never shall. It must have been your fancy, father, said his wife. It's so weird that.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say
his wife is referring to him as father.
Yeah, that's when you said. Yeah, I was very confused for a second.
Is that like what something?
It's like somebody calling you daddy.
In the day, like daddy, yeah, like.
What do you wish for, daddy?
Yeah. It must not have been your fancy father. Call me father.
Stop calling me that. You're not my son. You're my wife.
Like, oh, he's got that. If you want some strong father energy.
Oh, I love it when you call me father. These fucking 19th century freaks.
Yeah, right. Could you imagine? That would have been like the TikTok thing back in the day.
Call me father.
Like that. Yes, father, or like that strong father energy. Like all those videos. Like you want to give off some big father energy. Father
BFE.
He shook his head. Never mind. Though there's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same. They sat down by the fire again, and while the two men finished their pipes, outside the wind was higher than ever, and the old man started nervously at the sound of a door banging upstairs. A silence unusual and depressing settled upon all three, which lasted until the old couple rose to retire for the night. I expect you'll find the cash tied up in a big bag in the middle of your bed, said Herbert, as he bade them good night, and something horrible squatting up on top of the wardrobe watching you as you pocket your ill-gotten gains. He sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the dying fire and seeing faces in it. The last face was so horrible and so simian that he gazed at it in amazement. It got so vivid that with a little uneasy laugh he felt on the table for a glass containing a little water to throw it over it. His hand grasped the monkey's paw, and with a little shiver he wiped his hand on his coat and went to bed. In the brightness of the wintry sun next morning, as it streamed over the breakfast table, he laughed at his fears. There was an air of prosaic wholesomeness about the room, which it had lacked on the previous night, and the dirty, shriveled-up little paw was pitched on the sideboard with a carelessness which betokened no great belief in its virtues. I suppose all old soldiers were the same, said Mrs. White. The idea of our listening to such nonsense. How could wishes be granted in these days? And if they could, how could 200 pounds hurt you, father? Might drop on his head from the sky, said a frivolous Herbert. Morris said the things happen so naturally, said his father, that you might, if you so wished, attribute it to coincidence. Well, don't break into the money before I come back, said Herbert, as he rose from the table. I'm afraid it'll turn you into a mean, avaricious man.
You picked a tough one, man. You picked this 19th century word fucking salad.
Yeah, word salad. His mother laughed. Following him to the door, watched him down the road, and returning to the breakfast table, was very happy at the expense of her husband, credulity, all of which did not prevent her from scurrying to the door at the postman's knock, nor prevent her from referring somewhat shortly to retired sergeant majors of bibulous habits.
Yeah, you picked a good one.
This is like, yeah, this is
I wonder where the 21st century version of the story is.
Yeah, right. To retired sergeant majors of bibulous habits, when she found that the post brought a tailor's bill. Herbert will have some more of his funny remarks, I expect, when he comes home, she said as they sat at dinner. I dare say, said Mr. White, pouring himself out some beer. But for all that, the thing moved in my hand, that I'll swear to. You thought it did, said the old lady soothingly. I say it did, replied the other. There was no thought about it. I had just... What's the matter? His wife made no reply. She was watching the mysterious movements of a man outside, who, peering in an undecided fashion at the house, appeared to be trying to make up his mind to enter. In mental connection with the 200 pounds, she noticed that the stranger was well dressed and wore a silk hat of glossy newness. 3 times he paused at the gate and then walked on again. The 4th time he stood with his hand upon it, and then, with sudden resolution, flung it open and walked up the path. Mrs. White at the same moment placed her hands behind her, and hurriedly unfastening the strings of her apron, put the useful article of apparel beneath the cushion of her chair. She brought the stranger, who seemed ill at ease, into the room. He gazed at her furtively and listened in preoccupied fashion as the old lady apologized for the appearance of the room and her husband's coat, a garment which he usually reserved for the garden. She then waited as patiently as her sex would permit.
Oh. She's a woman, so she's not that patient.
Yeah, right.
What they're saying.
Yeah, I get that. It's just like, man, this is
brutal.
This did not age well. Her sex would permit for him to broach his business, but he was at first strangely silent. I was asked to call, he said at least, and stopped and picked a piece of cotton from his trousers. I come from...
What? He picked a piece of cotton from his trousers?
Yeah. I guess he has trousers and there was a piece of cotton on there, like a fuzzball or something.
Okay.
Yeah. I just... Yeah. Oh. Sorry. Looking for this.
Just tosses it.
I come from Ma and Megan's. The old lady started. Is anything the matter? She asked breathlessly. Has anything happened to Herbert? What is it? What is it? Her husband interposed. There, mother, he said hastily. Sit down and don't jump to conclusions.
Now, is mother like a term for an actual mother, or is this also a dirty kink word?
I think it's another dirty kink word. So, like, the way she's like referring to him as father, he's referring to her as mother. Calm down, mother.
Okay.
Like, it's just...
Oh, my goodness. Why do they do that back then? That's so weird.
Dude, I bet you there was some weird shit back then.
Oh, yeah.
Weird social norms and customs back then. I mean, you could just tell, like, they wrote this during a time where they're like, oh, women are less patient than men. So,
yeah.
You know, they're impatient not because, they're people, it's because their sex is, forced. You know what I mean? Like,
that's the only explanation is you're a woman.
Yeah, exactly. Like back then, like, oh, God, that would have been such a weird time to be alive. Her husband interposed. There, mother, he said hastily. Sit down and don't jump to conclusions. You've not brought bad news, I'm sure, sir. And he eyed the other wistfully. I'm sorry, began the visitor. Is he hurt? Demanded the mother wildly. The visitor bowed in assent. Badly hurt, he said quietly. But he's not in any pain. Oh, thank God, said the old woman, clasping her hands. Thank God for that. She broke off suddenly at the sinister meaning of the assurance dawned upon her, and she saw the awful confirmation of her fears in the other's averted face. She caught her breath, and turning to her slower-witted husband, laid her trembling old hand upon his. There was a long silence. He was caught in the machinery, said the visitor, at length in a low voice. Caught in the machinery, repeated Mr. White in a dazed fashion. Yes. He sat staring blankly out at the window, and taking his wife's hand between his own, pressed it as he had been wont to do in their old courting days, nearly 40 years before. He's the only one left to us, he said, turning gently to the visitor. Is it hard? The other coughed and rising, walked slowly to the window. The firm wished me to convey their sincere sympathy with you in your great loss, he said, without looking round. I beg that you'll understand. I am only their servant and merely obeying orders. There was no reply. The old woman's face was white, her eyes staring, her breath inaudible. On the husband's face was a look such as his friend, the sergeant, might have carried into his first action. I was to say that Moll and Meggins disclaim all responsibility, continued the other. They admit no liability at all, but in consideration of your son's services, they wish to present you with a certain sum of compensation. Mr. White...
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Mr. White dropped his wife's hand, rising to his feet, gazed with a look of horror at his visitor. His dry lips shaped the words, How much? 200 pounds was the answer.
Gotcha,
like,
bitch.
He's like, look up. There's like a monkey just sitting on the dresser. Yeah. Wringing his hands
See what you
together.
fucking did?
Yeah. He told you not to do it, but you did it.
Damn.
200 pounds was the answer. Unconscious, his wife shrieked. The old man smiled faintly, put out his hands like a sightless man, and dropped, a senseless heap, to the floor. In the huge new cemetery, some 2 miles distant, the old people buried their dead and came back to a house steeped in shadow and silence. It was all over so quickly that at first they could hardly realize, and remained in a state of expectation as though of something else to happen. Something else was to lighten this load, too heavy for old hearts to bear. But the days passed, and expectation gave a place to resignation, the hopeless resignation of the old, sometimes miscalled apathy. Sometimes they hardly exchanged a word, for now they had nothing to talk about, and their days were long to weariness. It was about a week after that the old man, waking suddenly in the night, stretched out his hand and found himself alone. The room was in darkness, and the sound subdued of weeping came from the window. He raised himself in bed and listened. "Come back," he said tenderly. "You'll be cold." "It's colder for my son," said the old woman, and wept afresh. The sound of her sobs died away on his ears. The bed was warm, his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully and then slept until a sudden wild cry from his wife awoke him with a start. "The paw," she cried wildly. "The monkey's paw." He started up in alarm. Where is it? What's the matter?" She came stumbling across the room toward him. "I want it," she said quietly. "You've not destroyed it." "It's in the parlor, on the bracket," he replied, marveling. "Why?" She cried and laughed altogether, and bending over and kissed his cheek. "I only just thought of it," she said hysterically. "Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it?" "Think of what?" he questioned. "The other 2 wishes," she replied rapidly. "We've only had 1. "Was that not enough?" he demanded fiercely. "No," she cried triumphantly. "We'll have 1 more. Go down and get it quickly."
Oh, she gonna fuck up? She fucking it up.
"And wish our boy alive again."
Nope, don't do that.
The man sat up in bed and flung his bedclothes from the quartering lips. "Good God, you are mad," he cried. Just like records crash.
Wait, you're gonna do what?
You gonna? Did you not?
Did you see what happened last time?
What part of he fell in the machinery did you not understand?
Oh, he's gonna come back as a mangled fucking corpse.
Okay, like in that situation, if you got confirmation that, okay, this...
I fucked up. Like,
well, not only that, but like you got confirmation that, okay, this thing does have the ability to make wishes come true.
Yeah.
So like, why wouldn't you at that point get like I mean, I guess you would have to convince them that like this thing has like power, but just like hypothetically approach it, be like, okay, let's say I had a wish that came true, but I needed to make sure that there were no negative ramifications.
You hire like a lawyer or something? Like a
you're like an attorney, like a litigator.
I need you to write me a wish.
But like one who like specializes in like spiritual legal battle. It's just, if you ever, how am I going to put this? You ever deal with the devil? All the time.
Oh, you're talking about a monkey paw? Oh, yeah.
It happens all the time. Yeah, let me
You're
guess.
like the 6th guy this week.
So somebody died that you know, what'd you wish for? Like what?
Oh, let me guess, you wish for some money.
Yeah.
You lost your son.
Yeah. All the time.
Yeah. Don't worry, I got you. I got some drafts written up here.
He's fucking monkey.
You wishing to get him back? Actually, yes.
Hi, Branson and Branson Legal Services. Like, oh man.
Ironically, the person that had the monkey's paw before wished for that exact thing, so now it's just a really fucked up version of the eternity.
He broke the system. My firm was like nothing before this guy shows up talking one day about a monkey's paw.
Yeah.
And now business is booming. I could retire next year. I'm only 27 years old.
Unbelievable how that worked out.
"Get it," she panted. "Get it quickly and wish. Oh, my boy, my boy." Her husband struck a match and lit a candle. "Get back to bed," he said unsteadily. "You don't know what you're saying." "We had the first wish granted," said the old woman feverishly. "Why not the second? A coincidence," stammered the old man. "Go and get it and wish," cried his wife, quivering with excitement. The old man turned and regarded her, and his voice shook. "He has been dead for 10 days, and besides... I would not tell you else, but I could only recognize him by his clothing. If he was too terrible for you to see then, how now? Bring him back, cried the old woman, and dragged him toward the door. Do you think I fear the child I've nursed? Okay, I never knew that was a thing in the story. Like, I completely missed that. Or maybe they didn't include that in that play. But I never understood or knew that the father is actually like
he's
kind
seen
of,
the mangled
and he's saying like
atrocity.
And he's like, if you bring him back, like
that's what he's probably gonna look like.
I completely missed that.
So you would think that at this point that he knows that, and it would be like, okay, so when I make this wish to have him come back, it's got to be very specific.
Exactly, like a very specific, no loopholes or anything.
But I don't know how you would get out of that. It's like, I want to bring my son back. To me, the monkey's paw we'll probably get to this at some point in the story, but it's like, I feel like no matter what you wish him to be,
they will always find a way.
It'll like be like, okay, I wish my son would come back to what he was before he died, in that way or whatever. You bring him back, and then no matter what, he dies again by like the same means.
Like there's some negative thing has to, like that's like the price you pay.
Yeah, it's like a loophole where it's just he's gonna die regardless.
Something or
like
something.
You either wish him to like a point in his life and you know he's going to die still again the same way, or you're going to wish him back after the fact and he's going to be a mangled corpse.
And there's like
shambling
like a
around.
price to pay, almost like it's,
something like that.
Yeah. He went down in the darkness and felt his way around the parlor, then to the mantelpiece. The talisman was in its place, and a horrible fear that the unspoken wish might bring his mutilated son before him ere he could escape from the room seized upon him, and he caught his breath as soon as he found that he had lost the direction of the door.
The erection of the door?
Direction of the door.
Hey, I don't know.
It's like, what they say when you get lost, just follow your erection.
I can imagine them calling a door handle a door erection at some point in the 19th century.
Probably. Like, I wouldn't put
just
it past
hold that door erection there, sir. Give it a good tug.
What did you guys just call it? A door erection. The handle?
I guess if that's what you want to be, if you want to be frivolous about it.
Well, they would probably look at you like, what the fuck is a handle? It's like, why are you
stop standing there with your snip Jimmy in your hands and pull the door erection?
It's like, okay, well, us normal people will call it opening the door.
I like to call it giving the erection a tug, but
I'm going to need you to stop talking to me, sir.
Just get away from me, 19th century man.
His brow cold with sweat, he felt his way around the table and groped along the wall until he found himself in the small passage with the unwholesome thing in its hand. Even his wife's face seemed changed as he entered the room. It was white and expectant, and to his fears seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. He was afraid of her. Wish, she cried in a strong voice. It's a foolish and wicked, he faltered. Wish, repeated his wife. He raised his hand. I wish my son alive again. Right there.
Yeah, see, you screwed it up.
Idiot.
You rushed it. This is taking a game plan. You got to have a game plan going into this. You just spat on that thought. Nope. Not gonna work.
He should have sat down,
thought it out, wrote it down.
A couple sticky notes. I'm talking like conspiracy theories.
Had a cup of coffee. I mean, he just woke up.
Cup of coffee in the middle of the night. Light your 1920s pipe, your cigar, whatever you have back then.
Put on your little house robe, your house shoes, your
the
little nighttime Scrooge hat.
The Scrooge cap's dangling.
Yeah. Your little candle on your plate.
Just
cup of coffee in one hand, pipe in your mouth,
your fountain pen, and
be like, okay, I'm gonna get this thing out. Don't worry, we're gonna get there. Just let me think about this for a second.
But she's probably like in the background, wish, Martha,
please, quiet, mother.
I'm gonna do it. I need to think.
Of course, she is only using the patience that her sex allows at this point. So.
That is wild that they put that in there. Like, I had to read that again. I was like, wait, what? Like when was this book written? Like, wish, she cried in a strong voice. It's foolish and wicked, he faltered. Wish, repeated his wife. He raised his hand. I wish my son alive again. The talisman fell to the floor, and he regarded it fearfully. Then he sank trembling into the chair as the old woman with burning eyes walked to the window.
He's doing the fucking Anakin's, what have I done?
And raised the blind. He sat until he was chilled with the cold, glancing occasionally at the figure of the old woman peering through the window. Just like, ding. Where is he? Where is he? He turns around slowly. You should have wished sooner. Okay. The candle end, which had burned below the rim of the china candlestick, was throwing pulsating shadows on the ceiling and the walls, until with a flicker, larger than the rest, it expired. The old man, with an unspeakable sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, crept back into his bed. In a minute or two afterward, the old woman came silently and apathetically beside him.
So when they keep saying the old woman, they're talking about the wife, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an old couple. They're like in their...
You keep saying the old woman. I was like...
It keeps changing back.
Yeah, it's like between mother, father, old woman, old man.
Just for the story, when they're saying father, old woman, old man, mother, they're referring to them.
Okay.
Neither spoke, but lay silently listening to the ticking of the clock. A stair creaked, and a squeaky mouse scurried noisily through the wall. The darkness was oppressive, and after lying for some time screwing up his courage, he took the box of matches and, striking one, went downstairs for a candle. At the foot of the stairs, the match went out, and he paused to strike another. And at the same moment, a knock, so quiet and stealthily as to be scarcely audible, sounded on the front door. The matches fell from his hand and spilled into the passage. He stood motionless, his breath suspended until the knock was repeated, and then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room and closed the door behind him. Nope. Just like
Nope. Not my problem. Just fucking leaves.
I specifically said not to make a wish. That was my wish. I wish for no wishes. Just like, hey Martha.
I think you got somebody at the door wants to see you.
Someone at the door.
Just close this one and on your way out. Just lock that. Thanks.
Here's a Bible.
Here's a crucifix, a Bible, and a shotgun.
There's no shotgun shell. Well, that's a you problem. The matches fell from his hand and spilled in the passage. He stood motionless, his breath suspended until the knock was repeated. Then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room and closed the door behind him. A third knock sounded through the house. "What's that?" cried the old woman.
It's your fucking problem.
"What's that?" cried the old woman.
I don't want to cut you off again, but like, why is it so much funnier to me if it's like a really old black couple?
I was just thinking. Trying to get through this so you don't have to edit so much.
I know.
Of the cutting.
I know. I'm sorry. I keep fucking it up. This is all staying in.
This is like, "What's that?" cried the old woman, starting up. "A rat," said the old man. "A rat," said the old man in shaking tones. "A rat. It passed me on the stairs."
It's like a little suitcase. Gives him the old top of the morning wave to him.
A one-way ticket to get the fuck out. His wife sat abed listening. A loud knock resounded through the house. "It's Herbert," she screamed. "It's Herbert." She ran to the door, but her husband was before her, and catching her by the arm, held her tightly. "What are you going to do?" he whispered hoarsely. "It's my boy. It's Herbert," she cried, struggling mechanically. "I forgot it was 2 miles away. What are you holding me for? Let go. I must open the door. For God's sake, don't let it in," cried the old man, trembling. "You're afraid of your own son?" she cried, struggling. "Let me go. I'm coming, Herbert. I'm coming." There was another knock, and another. The old woman, with a sudden wrench, broke free and ran from the room. Her husband followed to the landing and called for her, apparently, as she hurried downstairs. He heard the chain rattle back and the bottom bolt drawn slowly and stiffly from the socket. Then the old woman's voice, strained and panting. "The bolt," she cried loudly. "Come down, I can't reach it." but her husband was on his hands and knees, groping wildly on the floor in search of the paw. If he could only find it before the thing outside got in. A perfect full aside of knocks reverberated through the house, and he heard the scraping of a chair, and his wife put it down in the passage against the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt as it came slowly back, and at that same moment he found the monkey's paw and frantically breathed his third and last wish. The knocking ceased suddenly. Although the echoes of it were still in the house, he heard the chair drawn back and the door opened. A cold wind rushed up the staircase, and a long, loud wail of disappointment and misery from his wife gave him courage to run down at her side, and then to the gate beyond, the street lamp flickering opposite shone on a quiet and deserted road. The end.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. What do you think that last wish was? Outside of the obvious of being like, I don't want the fucking thing at the door to come in.
But it's kind of like that's what gives it like the element, because it doesn't tell you what his third wish was.
It's the Halloween 3 ending.
It doesn't tell you. Yeah, it doesn't tell you what like his third wish was.
Yeah.
It
what
also
are the consequences
doesn't,
of that going to be?
Right. But it also doesn't tell you what was on the other side of the door.
Right.
He's only like,
you assume.
This is all assumption.
Right.
He's just assuming that it's like, oh God, it's the end. You know, when I saw the play though, they changed it up a bit. In the play, they could see the sun through like a window pane, like the shadow of it.
Okay.
And like the wife and him both realized like, oh God, he's alive. But wait, he was caught in the machinery. And like, that's not our son. Yeah, basically like that. Yeah. So that was kind of like what this was like.
Yeah.
It's a classic story.
It is.
Good story.
I think there's a lot of things that have spun off on like the monkey's paw, like pop culture. I mean, one that really comes to mind is Twisted Metal. Like when you play Twisted Metal in the very end, you get your wish, and they always make these really open-ended wishes, and then Calypso turns it around on them to be very like fucked up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's
I'm
kind
sure
of
there's
like
more instances than that, but that's the first one that comes to mind.
There's kind of the X-Files had an episode about, it wasn't the monkey's paw, it was a genie, but that's what it was. They get called to like a case or whatever, and it was like some dude that died under like really mysterious circumstances. And upon further investigation, Mulder figures out that, oh, this person died from they had this wish and then they died, and he finds the person in question, the suspect. Mm-hmm. He realizes it's a genie. And same thing, I'll give you 3 wishes or whatever.
Yeah.
So I forget what like he wishes for the first 2 or whatever. She gives him like the stipulations, but the third wish or whatever, or the second wish, he gets like really methodical with it and like tries to like evade all loopholes and stuff like that.
Right.
Because of the same premise, you know, he wishes for something and of course it backfires on you. So
goes to show you, kids, you don't always get what you want.
What if you like wished for it to be uncursed?
Yeah, I don't think your wish would come true then, technically speaking. I mean, I guess simultaneously you wish for it to not be cursed, and that loses its magical power. So it's just like
a normal monkey paw?
Like defaults. Yeah, I would think. Unless the curse transfers to something else. Like you're like, oh, I don't want to, that would be fucking what it is. The monkey's paw is no longer cursed. You are.
Like you have the ability to grant wishes? Ooh.
Or you're just cursed and like doomed to live a life of misery.
That would be terrible.
It would be.
What would you wish for?
I would wish for a redo of wishes. Like my first wish is that when I'm wish for something, I want to be able to redo it if it doesn't turn out the way that I want it to turn out.
With no
alternative
consequences or alternative setbacks to me and or any persons related to me.
Or thereof know that I am in possession of this paw.
And by association, directly or indirectly.
Super hardcore legal jargon.
Just legal jargon. Like, oh, to Harvard Law. You're not going to wait.
You're not getting me, man. That was fun, man. That was fun. We should do that again. Maybe we'll do that periodically. We'll just do like a bonus read through of a couple of a story or 2 or something.
Find a couple episodes.
Yeah.
Or episodes. Kind of find a couple stories and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one. That first one, man. Haunted objects being for sale, and you take the people and kill them and make them be the haunted objects. That's a thought-provoking subject or story, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Those were good choices. I didn't know how long we would how many we'd get through before we inevitably ran out of time, essentially. But I think that's a good place to call it. So, yeah, good stuff. Any closing thoughts on either of those 2 stories?
Like I said, the monkey paw is it's a classic. If we continue to do this in future installments or future episodes, it'd be really cool to check out some other stories.
Yeah, absolutely. This is coming from a book. I literally, like I said at the top of the episode, I bought this at Second and Charles. It's called Chilling Ghost Short Stories. It's like a compilation of a bunch of different things, and it's pretty neat.
I like the cover.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
It's pretty
like
neat. It's like a gold.
Inlay.
Yeah. So the first one I read was called Ghost Farm by Zach Chapman, and then Nick read The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. Thank you guys for joining us on this episode. We're going to get back into more urban legends and ghost stories and cryptids in the next couple episodes, but we wanted to kind of do something a little special that was going to end our spooky season quadrilogy of episodes.
Quadrilogy,
4 episode streak of 4 weeks of October. But we had a bonus one in there. But thanks for listening to this episode of Shadows and Sightings. As always, you can find us on Instagram, Shadows and Sightings Pod, Facebook, Shadows and Sightings, a paranormal podcast. Shoot us an email, shadowsandsightings@gmail.com. Printful shop is still up. It's still Printful, right? Is it Printful?
Printful. Yeah.
I say Printify. It's Printful.
It's Printful.
It's Printful. We'll link that in the description. So get yourself a t-shirt, get yourself a hoodie. Thanks for supporting the show, and we'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things spooky.